CEO of Ittner Architects, the creators of Issues in Education, and we have three members of a school district that is representing the small school districts throughout the state of Missouri. Dr. Brian Lane is superintendent, and Keith Rabenberg is the board president, and Mark Wormer, board vice president, all of the Brentwood School District. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Good to have you all here. And Dr. Lane, I want to start with you. Talk a little bit about the advantages of being in a small district.
I think the key advantage is being able to truly know the every student. In other words, we know every student from an academic sense and where they're at. We understand their social emotional needs. It's a popular buzzword in education now to talk about personalized learning, and I like to think that Brentwood was doing personalized learning before personalized learning was cool.
Well, for that, describe exactly how small a district we're talking about. How many students from K all the way through 12?
800 students.
In all of those grades combined? 800 students. That's amazing. So how do you balance the traditions and mores of a small community with the needs of, we've talked a lot about 21st century education so far, when it comes to things like, obviously computer science, but also robotics and all of that. It's a small town, so how do you bring one into the other?
That's a great question, and I'll take it back to one thing I noticed being, I'm new to the district, just came in a few months ago, and we're looking, right now we've been doing a facilities analysis for the past year to really look at what the needs are of the school district. And coming in as an outsider, you might think that, well, we have two elementary schools of 200 students. Well, from an outsider's viewpoint, it might be like, well, why don't we just combine that into one big school? And there's your solution, and you can meet some of those needs, and it's very pragmatic. But and my board members can speak further to this, but it really, and what we heard loud and clear from the community is they really love the idea of the small residential schools that are in with the houses. The parents walk the kids to school. So that has been kind of the balancing of, of understanding what are the needs of the community and what really works for the community, while also wanting to offer that world-class education that Brentwood gives to students.
Well, Keith, you're president of the board and obviously elected by the community. Just the quality of life that seems to be in the community as parents walk their kids to school, stand outside the front door after school and wait for the kids to come out. It's just the closeness and kind of the pride that's associated with each one of your schools. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, it's something. My wife and I moved there before our kids were born 30-plus years ago, and we're not from the St. Louis area. And, it was a nice little community, and then kids come along. And, for example, when my daughter was going to school at McGrath Elementary, my wife could stand out on the front porch and watch her walk up the street to the school because it happens to be on our block, And now, if you're there in the morning, which I'm not very often because I work downtown, but you see kids of all kinds of sizes and parents walking up the street going to school. And that's kind of what Brian was saying about that's such an integral part of what this community is, that when you float the idea of getting rid of any part of that, you hear pretty quickly that that's not what they want. And so that's great. And that's, having personal interactions and the personal touch on each and every kid makes an enormous difference.
So, Mark, how is that balance struck then? I mean, if we're dealing with facilities that can be a little bit older because of tradition, again, how do you make that into a 21st century classroom?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question to answer, but it's one we're struggling with, and I think we're going to be really successful with. If you look at our current classroom setup, we have teachers that are already doing, like, problem-based learning, collaborative experiences, but they're doing it in a situation where they may have to send some of their students out in the hallway. So what we're really looking for when we develop our new facilities is facilities that are going to allow us to enhance those experiences that the teachers are already doing. So what we want to do is create an environment where the teachers can really maximize the potential of the students. And one of the things I want to chime in about the community feel is that I've only lived here for about 6 years. We got really lucky that we ended up in Brentwood. We didn't even really know about the community. And the thing that you can do in Brentwood is actually have a relationship with all the parents as well. So as our kids are walking to school, I've got little spies along the way that says, hey, your son did not stop at the crosswalk. You should just talk to him about that. Mm-hmm. You can't do that in a big school district.
Right. Very much. Well, one of the other challenges, Dr. Lane, is the fact that the outside of your buildings are very traditional. They fit very nicely in appearance to the community. But as you go inside, these are buildings that were designed decades ago for a different educational program. And as Mark indicated, with the collaboration and STEM and the way learning occurs now, there's a real need that as you pass by the school and don't go in, you just don't know what that's like.
Yeah, I think that's been part of our challenge is, they are nice-looking buildings if you're not trying to work in them on a daily basis. And a lot of our challenges have been things that while they were originally built anywhere from the 1920s to the 1960s, the very small classrooms. And now we're trying to do a lot with collaborative learning. We want to do a lot of the project-based learning, and you just don't have the space in those classrooms or anywhere for those kids to go to do that. We've also had a real push for more STEM activities in our school. So we're doing a lot with engineering and medical sciences and so forth. And so to have those kind of science labs and those spaces is going to be imperative. We were talking, the board was talking recently, and one of the things that we really want to get to is where it's our curriculum and instruction that determines our facilities, and not the opposite way around, where we can, we're constrained by our facility needs. So while we have been very successful as a school district, there are still times where we're coming up against these constraints.
That seems like those constraints could include, in addition to just the physical challenges, monetary challenges as well. Retrofitting sounds expensive. Is it?
It can be, and that's why we're carefully analyzing each building. There is an example where with one of our elementaries, McGrath, frankly, it is not aged well, and it's really not meeting our needs at this point. So one idea from the facilities committee, we have a group of community members that's been meeting for over a year, is going to be a full tear down and rebuild of that elementary. At our other sites, we believe that we still have good bones in place, and with some substantial renovations that we can really, make them great buildings for the next 30 to 50 years.
So you just take the pill, gut them once, and get it all ready to go.
Our hope is if we can do this all in one shot, we can set up the Brentwood School District, being the small size that we've been talking about, for the next 50 years at this point.
So how much more of a challenge does that become in a district that's 800 kids versus one that may have a high school that has more than that?
Challenge being in terms of
getting that money together to get all of these projects done.
Well, that remains to be seen, John.
Glad I brought it up then. No, but and Mark and Keith, and both of you can speak to this as well. So as school board president and vice president, what then becomes your job in working with Dr. Lane to make sure that those facilities are updated the way they should?
Well, there actually has to be like a separate committee that puts together a bond, obviously. But again, because we're Brentwood and we're a small community and everyone knows each other, we can actually do what you would do for marketing super, super fast. And word of mouth marketing is actually usually the best. When you're talking to your friends right around the block and tell them about why this is good for the community, it's going to be very, very successful, I think. And we've already had a lot of support. We've already got, how many people are on our committee right now for facilities? Like 26?
Yeah, that's just the ongoing big committee.
So, I mean, I think there's already a lot of support, but to Brian's point, we need to make sure we see it through. We're going to make sure that we put together a plan that everyone cares about and sees as responsible for the taxpayer base, but is going to enhance not our children's lives going forward, but also the community as a whole.
I wonder. I know that the parents can see the benefit because you said so.
I'm having a little difficult hearing you.
You've said that the parents can see the benefit about keeping things the way they were, keeping the small town feel. Did the kids get that as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all it's interrelated. The parents and the kids are invested in the schools. People like myself who don't have kids in the schools anymore, we're invested in the community because that's what keeps, property values are very important. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but these things are all kind of interrelated. If you say, what's the challenge in getting the community behind the bond issue that we need to do? Well, if you go back to what we were saying earlier about how the people invested in this community the way it is and, taking away an elementary school is offensive to people, our job is to help people understand why it is that this is necessary to preserve what we have and improve it going forward. And I've been on the board quite a while, and my impression is that if we can get the people to understand this, they'll be behind it because it's important to them.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but gentlemen, thank you again for coming in, and Mark Wormer, Keith Rabenberg, and Dr. Brian Lane, thank you for joining us on Issues in Education.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We'll do some more talking from here. We are at Tantera as there's a Missouri School Board Association meeting going on, and there's plenty more to come from here. John Grayson alongside Dennis Young, President and CEO of Ittner Architects from Tantera on the Big 550 KTRS.